This video is brought to you by CKGSB, China's only not-for-profit independent business school.
Well, I'm a firm believer in the principle of free markets and free trade, and that an economic system that focuses on consumers rather than producers lifts more people out of poverty and creates more wealth. That was the fundamental thesis of Adam Smith in The Wealth of Nations. That take away the power from the producers, create more entrepreneurs throughout a society, and there will be better wealth for everyone. But it's blindsided for a capitalist to believe that the kind of, we call it now crony capitalism, where big business and big government collude together for their own advantage against the ordinary person. That's not the kind of capitalism that we can really defend. The kind of capitalism that we can defend is a capitalism that has a profit motive, yes, but also sees its responsibility in terms of the larger society. And sees it not because only of a moral imperative, although I think that is important, but also for the sustainability of itself. Because at the end of the day, if the ordinary man and woman does not believe in the system, they're going to bring it down. So it's not possible for capitalists to live in some gated community with big cars and big houses. That's all right if it's honestly earned in a level playing field where everyone has an opportunity to the top. That's what I mean by inclusive capitalism. That is a metaphor that I can't take credit for because it comes from Larry Katz at Harvard. But what he says is that the metaphor is that the Anglo-Saxon capitalist model 30 years ago was the envy of the world. It was like the apartment block that everyone wanted to move to. But that now the apartments on the top of that block are marble and beautiful and spacious. In the middle, they're cramped and they're kind of dodgy. And on the lower floors, they're flooded with water. But that the worst part about the apartment block today is the elevator is broken. And the elevator being broken is not a sustainable place for any economic system to be. An economic system has to be one that gives opportunity to all, opportunity to people to be on the elevator and to go up. That's all anyone can ask from a society, not an equality of outcome, not that everyone is going to be rich, but that everyone has an opportunity to be rich. When I was young, we called that the American dream, that if you worked hard and you played by the rules, anything was possible. Now I think it's the Chinese dream, and I think China is doing a remarkable job. The number of people brought out of absolute poverty in this country is such an admirable achievement. And I know it's not called capitalism here, but I think it is called a market economy. So we'll call it market economy and celebrate the successes, although everyone has to think about possible things that can go wrong. I'm learning about the Chinese model. Certainly the absolute fact of 600 million people coming out of poverty is an enormous achievement. I am always impressed when we meet with leaders here and ask a question. Inevitably, the first part of their answer is, the people believe. So, although this is not a democracy in the way that I know it as an American, there seems to be deep concern with creating a peaceful and prosperous society. So I can't say that it is the model in that way, but the emphasis on hard work, the emphasis on entrepreneurialism, although it's different from American entrepreneurs, is very impressive. That's a very important question all through the world. In the 60s, Milton Friedman was really the champion of shareholder value. And he proposed that the objective of a corporation is to make profits for its shareholders. And I think we know now that a focus only on shareholder value is too narrow. And that for a company to be sustainable, the corporation has to focus on its customers, its employees, its shareholders, and of course its management. And there has to be an ecosystem for business of taking care of the broader society. And there are some wonderful examples today of international corporations that make it clear that they care about all the stakeholders. The one that comes to mind for me is Paul Polman of Unilever. He has said to his investors, if you care about long-term sustainability, if you care about the good of all individuals involved in our enterprises, then invest in Unilever. If you care about quarterly results, if you're short-term, you're going to follow my stock, go invest in someone else's stock. You're a perfectly good person, but you're not the kind of investor that I want. And what we're seeing is that more and more corporations are saying we need to invest for the long term, which means that we can't give quarterly earnings every quarter and increase every quarter. We're going to have to reinvest in the company and have a long-term view. And that is very much our view, and we're seeing it more and more really around the globe. The Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, which is a Canadian teachers' pension, they have $125 billion under management. They have made it very clear that they're going to make direct investments, take larger positions. They're going to be involved in CEO compensation. See, the CEO compensation has gotten way out of whack because of this emphasis on shareholder value and really stock options. So from 1943 to 1983, the average CEO in the United States made 40 times the average worker. Today, it's 243 times. Now, that's really not sustainable, and it's not justified, which is why you have investors beginning to say, well, wait a second, those pay packages that were tied to share results in a market that until 2008 rose for 13 years, created disequilibrium. The top was compensated too much. And I think there's going to be there definitely is a reversal of that. CalPERS, the California pension plan, which is about $300 billion, they're saying the same thing. So I think there's a readjustment of shareholders' understanding of long-term value creation from corporations, which means corporations engage more in their society. The most certain trigger will be if investors demand it. And in the work that we've done with the Henry Jackson Initiative on inclusive capitalism, one of the pathways that we focus on is how to get investors to demand long-term thinking, and how do they measure it. So, and that's of course obvious, right, in capitalism. If the capital requires better behavior, then the behavior will become better. So look at what happened to Barclays Bank after the LIBOR scandal, JP Morgan after the whale scandal. Doing the wrong thing, Enron blew up. So very bad behavior gets punished. And so you're right, those are all companies that made huge fortunes for people and had meteoric stock rises, but they got too greedy and they crashed and burned. So if shareholders are careful and shareholders demand long-term businesses that care about the sustainability of their business and the community in which they live, management will change. That's a very important way to position the issue, because the point has always got to be that a corporation's first obligation is to stay in business and therefore be profitable. It's not a charity. And so the first consideration for behavior by corporations that take a broader view is that this will make their company more sustainable for the long term. So why would a company get involved in education? The reason is that they need employees who can do the work that's required. So an example that we have on our website is Rolls-Royce. Rolls-Royce, 25 years ago, so not because of corporate social responsibility or because of any philanthropic reason, 25 years ago, they decided they needed people who had Rolls-Royce inside of them, working for them. So they created an academy, an apprenticeship program, where they would send their employees to basically be educated later on in their career. And this right now have 25% of the current management of Rolls-Royce went through that academy. That's an example of a corporation for business reasons teaching its employees how to work. In terms of the small and medium enterprise and your question about, if you nurture, Facebook, will it eat up Google? Okay, Facebook didn't need this kind of help. But what we really focus on is the large corporations that can give ordinary supply opportunities to small and medium enterprises. So Hewlett-Packard is an example. They opened up their operations in the UK, and they said that by 2015, 10% of everything that they buy as a company will come from small and medium enterprises. And they're making an active effort. That doesn't mean they're buying circuit boards from small and medium enterprises, but they're buying their pencils and their their glassware and their furniture from small and medium enterprises. And that's good for them because it diversifies their supply chain. There's another example in the United States of IBM. IBM created something called the supplier connection. Now, granted, they started it with $10 million of foundation money. So it wasn't a business decision. It was a charitable decision. They spent $10 million creating a website where they could, and then they invited other Fortune 500 companies. They've got UPS, Federal Express, JP Morgan, AT&T, about 20 companies to put their supply requirements, again, for mundane things, for carpeting, for chairs, for lighting, for food, for simple things that small and medium companies can do very well, put their requirements on the website, and companies that employ fewer than 50 people can compete online to supply to the biggest corporations in America. Now, that again is good. It creates jobs. It creates a diversified supply chain. So that's what we did with the Henry Jackson Initiative on Inclusive Capitalism. Was we said, we're not into government policy. We're business people. We're executives. Let's see what we can do to make the free market more acceptable to more people. How can we help these very bad results that have happened, including unemployment? In an ideal world, socially responsible business would be a redundancy because business would be socially responsible. Business will not survive if it's not socially responsible. Back to Unilever. Unilever started as a business because Lord Lever got worried that the sanitary conditions in Victorian England were so awful. So he created a little soap powder, a little cheap soap powder that people could wash their hands and get rid of the bacteria. And it became a global business that survived for 150 years. He started with a social concern, and he created a business around it. So socially concerned businesses is almost a redundancy, I hope. I think, well, in India, there's a company like Tata. I think Tata is a great example. They have education for their employees, and I think that that's a fine example of a company that's deeply embedded in the community. And I'm sure the same is true of companies, in China.